Europe tried to solve a problem by removing one person from the map. They didn't just defeat him, they put an ocean between him and power. Napoleon Bonaparte started as a Corsican-born artillery officer who found his moment during the French Revolution. In 1793, he broke through into national attention at the Siege of Toulon, and a couple years later he became known in Paris for helping the government crush a royalist uprising. In 1796, he took command in Italy and ran a campaign that turned him into a hero at home. His army beat Austrian forces and their allies repeatedly, and the victories made him famous far beyond the military. He then led a major expedition to Egypt in 1798. It didn't end the way he wanted militarily, but it raised his profile and positioned him for politics. By November 1799, he had helped engineer a coup that ended the existing government, and he took power as first consul. From there, he rebuilt the state around himself. A few years later, he locked in this authority. In 1804, he established the Napoleonic Code and crowned himself emperor. From that point onward, Europe rotated around war with France. Napoleon won major battles, expanded French influence, and forced rival powers into repeated coalitions to stop him. Then the momentum broke. In 1812, he invaded Russia, and the campaign turned into a disaster that bled his army and encouraged the rest of Europe to unite against him. By 1814, coalition forces pushed into France, and Napoleon abdicated. The settlement that followed, formalized in the Treaty of Fontainebleau in April 1814, sent him into his first exile on the island of Elba. Napoleon arrived in Elba in early May of 1814 and stepped into a very official exile. The agreement that sent him there let him keep the title of emperor, gave him Elba as a principality, and allowed him a personal guard of 400 men. He behaved like someone running a mini-state. He planned road and building projects and pushed for administrative reforms. The problems, however, showed up fast. Elba was small, money was tight, and the comfortable exile described on paper depended on funds that he wasn't receiving consistently. The treaty promised a yearly allowance, but Napoleon believed France was not paying what had been agreed. All the while, he watched the situation in France deteriorate. While Europe tried to settle things at the Congress of Vienna, Napoleon watched closely and came to a basic conclusion. The new regime was unpopular enough that the country might accept him again. Napoleon waited for a window where the attention on him loosened. Late February of 1815 delivered it. Guard ships were absent at the wrong moment, and Napoleon had already quietly assembled what he needed. On February 26, 1815, he left Elba. He sailed with roughly 1,000 men, his guards and loyal soldiers. 5 days later, on March 1st, he landed on the French mainland. King Louis fled, and Napoleon entered Paris on March 20th, taking power again. That return marked the start of the 100 Days period. The rest of Europe saw this as an emergency. The major powers mobilized another coalition, and Napoleon raced to rebuild an army and a government fast enough to fight before they could fully converge. He moved north into Belgium to defeat the coalition forces. The campaign peaked on June 18th at the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon lost, his army broke, and he retreated back towards Paris. 4 days later, on June 22nd, he abdicated a second time. He tried to get out of France and reach the United States, but the British Navy blocked the ports around the area. He surrendered to the British on July 15th. He expected to be imprisoned in Britain, but the British government decided to permanently exile him instead, sending him to Saint Helena, a British-controlled island more than 4,000 miles away from France. After a long Atlantic voyage, the ship reached Saint Helena on October 15th. Napoleon's custody on Saint Helena was organized and documented from the start. George Cockburn, the naval officer responsible for the voyage, kept a diary of the trip and the early part of Napoleon's confinement. Napoleon did not go straight to Longwood, his eventual residence. He stayed at the Briars while the permanent residence was prepared. He had visited Longwood almost immediately, then spotted the Briars Pavilion and asked to be moved there instead. The Briars sat on property connected to William Balcombe and his family. Napoleon befriended William's daughter, with whom he had one of the few socially normal relationships on the island. After a few months of preparation work, Napoleon moved into Longwood House in December of 1815. That house became the center of the exile for the remaining years of his life. It sat in the eastern part of the island. It was windy, barren, and humid, which led to constant complaints from Napoleon. Once Napoleon settled at Longwood, his day-to-day life ran through a system built around one priority: preventing another escape. His mail was opened and controlled. He was allowed to walk only within a limited area, usually under supervision, and Longwood itself was watched continuously. He lived with a small circle of companions and staff. This setting began to wear on everyone. It was repeatedly described as damp and uncomfortable, with poor weather and living conditions. Napoleon's life centered on reading, conversation, and long stretches of talking while someone else wrote down what he said. That habit produced a steady stream of notes and memoir material. In 1816, Sir Hudson Lowe took over as governor, and the relationship deteriorated quickly. He was following instructions from London to prevent another escape, and those instructions translated into tighter, more intrusive routines at Longwood. Napoleon's life became harder as time went on. Correspondence was allowed, but it was monitored, and the rules made private communication essentially impossible. Over time, that pressure pushed Napoleon and his circle into workarounds, coded phrasing, intermediaries, attempts to send messages outside official channels. That's where the first major problem happened. In late 1816, Emmanuel de las Casas, Napoleon's close friend on the island, was arrested and then expelled after being caught with letters he was trying to send out secretly. The same thing later happened with Napoleon's doctor, Barry O'Meara. As a result of this, Napoleon was left more isolated and access to outside voices was even narrower. As time went on, he spent more time indoors, his routine grew more sedentary, and his health steadily worsened. Napoleon had recurring stomach pain and digestive distress that continued to get worse. In early 1821, his health declined sharply, and he died at Longwood on May 5th. The autopsy findings were consistent with severe gastric disease, and the conclusion was stomach cancer with serious internal bleeding. Because Napoleon's correspondence and incoming materials were opened and checked, it would make sense that any secret message meant for him would have needed to arrive disguised as something ordinary, hidden in a way that didn't look like a message at all. Chess wasn't an obscure hobby in Napoleon's time. A lot of educated people played, and it was common in big cities, especially in places like Paris where you'd see people playing in cafes and public rooms. It was a normal pastime for anyone who spent time around politics, the military, or the upper class. It's no surprise then that Napoleon picked up the game, and his chess habit became well documented throughout his life. He frequented the Café de la Regency in Paris, a chess hub of the time. Surely, a military commander often considered one of the greatest strategic and tactical thinkers of all time would excel at the game of chess, right? No. In fact, Napoleon was considered a mediocre chess player throughout his life. While records of his games are scarce and somewhat unreliable, we do have a few games of his we can point to. One of them we can pin down with confidence involves a famous opponent known as the Turk. In 1809, during the war with Austria, Napoleon played chess against this mysterious opponent in Vienna. The Turk was presented as a machine that could play chess on its own, but it was later revealed to be a clever illusion. A strong human player was hidden inside the cabinet and controlled the moves. Napoleon still took the game seriously and he lost. In the second game, he opened with the move sequence e4, e5, queen to f3, which later picked up the nickname the Napoleon opening. It's a risky, generally inferior way to start because it brings the queen out too early and makes development awkward. According to modern chess engines, the move immediately gives the player with the black pieces an advantage of 44 centipawns, meaning it's like giving your opponent a half of one of your pawns. He kept up the hobby no matter what, through his military campaigns and even during his exile on Saint Helena. Because communication with him was so strictly monitored, could his chess habit have given someone an idea for how to slip him a secret message? So here's how the story goes. Napoleon's supporters still believed there was a way to get him off the island. Instead of putting a plan on paper where it could be read, they tried something quieter. They sent him a chess set. A beautiful chess set made of carved ivory. Napoleon wouldn't have known who to thank, however, as the man who was entrusted to deliver it to him died on the journey to Saint Helena. But inside one of the pieces, there was a hidden compartment, and inside that compartment was an escape plan containing details on what he needed to do. Napoleon continued playing on that chess set for the rest of his life. Because the man sent to deliver him the chess set died on the journey, Napoleon never knew of the hidden message and never found it. He played game after game, with the plan sitting inches from his hand the whole time, sealed inside a piece he never thought to open. Napoleon never found the best move on the board. So, where does this story come from? The primary modern source of the story that most people know it from comes from the 2006 book, The Immortal Game, A History of Chess, by David Shank. From there, the story got shared widely in chess articles and blogs with the same core pieces staying the same. But trying to track it back earlier than that, the trail got a lot thinner. There were tons of writings from that exile, diaries, memoirs, official British records, and accounts from people who lived with him. Those sources talked a lot about surveillance, rules, and the constant fear of an escape. They mentioned chess as a pastime and even chess-related items showing up around him. But this specific story isn't mentioned in any of those documents we know of today. If a chess set like that ever existed, it would have had to get past people whose job was to look for this kind of thing. At the same time, the basic logic of the story did fit the reality of the island. Napoleon did play chess there, and chess equipment did show up around him. One diary even recorded Napoleon mentioning a chessboard among items he'd received, so the idea of the story didn't come out of nowhere. The hidden compartment part was possible in a physical sense, but it also raises obvious problems. If the compartment was easy to open, it would be easy for a guard to find it. If it was hard to open, Napoleon would have needed to be told exactly where to look, which was why the story depended so heavily on that courier dying before he could explain it. Ultimately, this story appears to be an unverifiable legend. A story about a man whose life had been built around reading positions, seeing the next move, and forcing other people into bad choices, reduced to moving pieces around a board while the real board never changed, with the best move sitting right in front of him the whole time. A best move that never gets played.